So good afternoon, everyone. In the last class, we were talking about Mauryan Empire and various aspects related to Mauryan Empire. We talked about the sources, we talked about the important rulers, we talked about Ashoka's Dhammas and his ideas which are inscribed on stone. So we talked about all those aspects. Then we moved to talk about the economic aspects of Mauryan Empire. We discussed the social aspects as well. So is everything clear till that particular segment? You have revised it? Okay. So let us move on to the next segment. Today what we are going to do, we are going to discuss the other aspects, religious and cultural aspects. I'll give you a briefing about the administrative aspect of Mauryan Empire, and then we'll start talking about post-Mauryan period. Okay, so that is going to be our way of discussion in today's class. When we talk about post-Mauryan period, what becomes important there? So from UPSC perspective, again, they are not asking you about kings. They are asking you about literature. They are asking you about sites. They are asking you about philosophy. So that is the arena where you should put your focus. Okay, so let us continue our discussion. We talked about society. What aspects did we talk about when we were talking about society? We talked about prevalence of Varna system. What is the prominent source of knowledge about this particular system in Mauryan period? Arthashastra. We talked about Arthashastra. We used that as source. What else did we discuss? We talked about prevalence of caste system, jatis that were being formed at this point of time. So that again our knowledge is coming from Arthashastra. We discussed the institution of slavery. What is the difference between Megasthenes' ideas on slavery in ancient India and Arthashastra's view? Not king, master. Anyone who is owning a female slave. Legal rights, the son will be acknowledged a legal son of the master, and the whole family has to be manumitted. Okay, so when we are talking about Megasthenes in Indica, he is telling us that there was an absence of the institution of slavery in Mauryan Empire. When we are looking at other sources like Ashokan inscription, we find a mention of slavery in Rock Edict 13, Major Rock Edict 13. When we are looking at a text like Arthashastra, we find a mention of slavery and rules that should be applicable in the context of having a slave. Who can become a slave, that is also something which has been talked about in a lot of detail. So prevalence of slavery we had discussed. Then if we talk about the condition of women, is the condition of women going to be good during Mauryan period? So condition will remain more or less the same. Okay, here we find another category of women who are turning into bhikkhunis, who are turning into nuns. Why? Because of the importance of Buddhism and Jainism. So we find that category as well, and Arthashastra particularly is not happy with that category of women. It is a text of Shastric tradition. Okay, so here the very same ideas of women remaining under the boundaries of households, that will be applicable in the context of Arthashastra. Arthashastra mentions a particular term called Stridhana. What do we mean by Stridhana? The property held by women. So what is a Stridhana? A kind of property that a woman acquires at the time of marriage from the natal family as well as from the family of the in-laws. That will be called Stridhana. And it is said that this is the only kind of property that women had the right to inherit. Okay, so this is a term that we can remember. When we are looking at the institution of marriage, it will remain the same, the way it was present in Vedic culture. Okay, so there will be a continuation in that context. So these are a few things which we should remember when we are talking about society. What about religion? If we talk about religion, what is going to, which ones are going to be prominent religions at this particular point of time? So Buddhism and Jainism were more popular. If we compare Buddhism and Jainism, Buddhism was much more prominent in comparison to Jainism. If we look at the rulers, we see Chandragupta Maurya patronizing Jainism, we see Ashok patronizing Buddhism. Bindusar is somebody who is patronizing Ajivika sect. Okay, the texts belonging to Ajivika sect have not survived. We find their mention in Buddhist and Jain sources. Apart from this, Brahmanism was also present. What is different here? That rulers are not patronizing Brahmanism. Okay, that is one thing that will be present here. So a lot of philosophical strands are present in this particular society. Buddhism is spreading at large scale. When we talk about culture, so in culture we need to talk about the language, we need to talk about the script, we need to talk about the important literary texts. So that is something that we have already covered. Okay, when we are talking about the scripts, we discussed it. Language, we have discussed it. Texts, we have already discussed when we were discussing the sources. That has also been given in your revision material. Okay, so you can refer to the literary texts from there as well for the purpose of revision. Is this clear? So this is what we needed to know about Mauryan Empire. Now let us look at some of the PYQs, whether you are able to solve it or not. I hope you have done your homework. देख के आए हैं अशोकन साइट्स मैप में? चलें देखते हैं कि क्या क्या याद है. ये 13 वाला क्वेश्चन एक है जो, चलिए पहले ऐसे देख लेते हैं क्या मसला है. आई डोंट नो. विच ऑफ द फॉलोइंग कैरेक्टराइज द पीपल ऑफ इंडस सिविलाइजेशन? वी हैव डिस्कस्ड अदर क्वेश्चंस ऑन इंडस सिविलाइजेशन इन दिस पीपीटी. आई हैड अ क्वेश्चन फ्रॉम 2013 एज वेल. वी कैन लुक एट इट. ओके, फर्स्ट, दे possessed great palaces and temples. No, this is a wrong statement. They worshipped both male and female deities. This is right. They employed horse-drawn chariots in warfare. No. Okay, so it's a pretty simple question. I told you that if you look at questions from 2013, 14, they are very simple in nature. Okay, so our answer will be 2 only. B will be our answer. This is from 2016. Which one of the following had first deciphered the edicts of Emperor Ashok? B. James Prinsep. This is from 2019, and here you can see a question on sites. In which one of the following relief sculpture, this is the relief sculpture in the background, is Ranyo Ashok, King Ashok mentioned along with the stone portrait of Ashok? Kanaganahalli. Okay, this is the portrait and here it has been written. So Kanaganahalli, Sanchi, Shahbazgadi and Sah Gora, they have given 4 options to us and the right one is Kanaganahalli. When we are talking about Sanchi, why the inscription found in Sanchi becomes important? He is addressing the people of the Sangha. In yesterday's class only we discussed it, that he is addressing the people of Sangha there. Shah Gaura is also of importance. Why? Relief measures provided by the state, that is something which has been mentioned. Read this. Who among the following rulers advised his subjects through this inscription? Whosoever praises his religious sect or blames other sects out of excessive devotion to his own sect, with the view of glorifying his own sect, he rather injures his own sect very severely. By logic, it will be Ashok. It has to be Ashok. Because when we are talking about ancient Indian rulers, often we don't find a direct voice from the past. It is Ashok who is trying to establish a communication directly, not only with his subjects, but also with the coming generation. That he writes in himself in his 13th major rock edict. Okay, so it has to be Ashok only. Ashok is going to be our answer. The other options are also present. Samudragupta, Harshvardhan, Krishnadeva Raya. They have not established a direct communication with the subjects. Here, if we look at this advice, he is talking about preserving a social and religious harmony amongst people. This is what we discussed yesterday. Now let us come to the next question. What is given here? According to Kautilya's Arthashastra, which one of following are correct? 2022 it was asked. A person could be a slave as a result of a judicial punishment. Seems right, but UPSC has considered it wrong. Why? It's half a statement. A person could be a slave as a result of a judicial punishment for a time period, not forever. Okay, so that was the logic behind considering it a wrong statement. If a female slave bore her master a son, she was legally free. Yes, she and the family was legally manumitted. If a son born to a female slave was fathered by her master, the son was entitled to the legal status of the master's son. This is a right statement. Okay, so what is going to be our answer? 2 and 3. अगर technicality नहीं होता, then 1, 2 and 3. Okay? This we'll discuss कुछ वक्त में. Now let's come to this. Dhauli, Odisha. Eragudi, Jaugarh, Kalasi, Uttarakhand. Eragudi is also correct and Dhauli is also correct. When we are talking about Jaugarh and Kalsi, they are matched wrong. So here, which one of the pairs, how many pairs given above are correctly matched? Only 2 pairs. Okay, so these kind of questions are also being asked in UPSC now. These were the recent questions that UPSC has asked on Mauryan period. If you look at the nature of questions, it is not revolving around political history anymore. Here, if we look at the questions, they are revolving around the cultural history of ancient India. They are asking you about important inscriptions. They are asking you about important sites. They are going into the details of literary texts as well. Okay, so we should be prepared with that mindset, that we should know about the important Ashokan inscriptions. We should know about the details of Ashokan inscriptions. We should know about the important literary texts from ancient India. So there are certain texts about which we should definitely know. This is very practical, that we won't be able to know the nitty-gritties of every text. Okay, we should at least know the names and writers of important texts. But when it comes to some of the very prominent texts which have been historically important for us, for example, a text like Arthashastra, we should know some of the details as well. Is this clear? That is why I am simultaneously showing you questions as well. Because this is a problem which remains in history, that students keep mugging up facts, students keep mugging up dates. Then they go write the examination और कहते हैं कि question तो आया ही नहीं, पढ़ तो सब कुछ लिया हिस्ट्री में. But that is the problem. क्या आपका एग्जामिनेशन है, whether you are appearing for UPSC examination or state PCS or any other one-day examination, you should be aware of the nature of that particular exam, because a particular subject can be studied in multiple ways. What is the method that you need to apply to study for a particular exam? That is something very important which you should figure out. Okay, so I hope you are able to make sense of the nature of the questions that are being asked. Okay, now is there any doubt till here? Clear hai? Chalen, let us move on to the next topic then. Post-Mauryan period. Roughly, we use this particular term, post-Mauryan period, to identify a time period from the decline of Mauryan Empire to the rise of Gupta Empire. Okay, so that is the time period we are concerned with. Now, when we are talking about this time period, what kind of questions is UPSC asking in mains, in prelims examination? In mains also, this period remains very, very relevant. Here we are going to discuss it from prelims perspective. So what kind of questions are being asked? They are not interested in political details. That is what we can understand by looking at the questions. With this period, another problem is present, that we don't know a lot about the chronology of most of the rulers. Why? Lack of sources. That is one problem which is present here. So there are some rulers जिनका हमको chronology पता है, but we don't need to mug it up. Okay, if there is a particularly important date that you need to remember, that will mostly come from modern India, not in ancient. In medieval, there are certain dates which become important, that I will tell you when we will reach to medieval period. Okay, here do not be bothered about the chronology a lot or exact date a lot. Remember roughly the centuries that we are talking about. Is this clear? Now, when we are talking about this time period, what is happening? There are a lot of kingdoms and empires which emerged during this period. Do we need to know everything about each of these kingdoms? No. We need to know the important cultural details. If there is an important site, we should know. If there is an important literary piece, we should know. If the ruler has patronized a particular scholar, that is something that we should know. If there is a particular term that is present during this period, we should know about that. So what we are going to do, we will divide these rulers geographically and in terms of their identity. What had happened during this time? That the Great Wall of China was constructed. So earlier, whenever different people bearing different identities, when they are coming to this land in search of resources, where are they going? They'll be deflected towards China also. They'll come to Indian subcontinent as well. Now, when the Great Wall of China has been constructed, a majority of this population is going to migrate towards Indian subcontinent. So we see an influx in the number of people who migrated during post-Mauryan phase. Okay, so there are people who are not originally belonging to Indian subcontinent. They are migrants who came here and who settled down. There are people who are having indigenous identity. So they are also going to form their kingdoms, and these people who are migrants, they are also going to form their kingdoms and empires. Is this clear? So when we are talking about people who are migrants, Indo-Greeks will become important for us culturally. Then we should know some of the details about a few Shaka king. To be very precise, about Rudradaman, we should have basic information. Then Parthians are there, but there is not much which was done during their rule. There was this particular missionary, Sant Thomas, who had came to India during the rule of Gondo Ferinus. So that can be seen as an attempt to spread Christianity. That is one detail that you can remember. Other details are not important from prelims perspective, because then there will be the geographical area, chronology of rulers. That is not something that UPSC is asking. So we should know some of the cultural details related to Indo-Greeks, Shakas, and the most important will become Kushan. Okay, so when we are talking about North India, prominently we are going to talk about Kushan. Okay, then if we come to people having indigenous identity, Shungas are going to be there. So here we need to know about the literary texts which were being composed during that time. Kanvas are going to be there, but not that important culturally. So we don't need to pay a lot of attention to them from prelims perspective, not even from mains perspective. Okay, now here Satvahans. Satvahans will become very important, who are having an indigenous identity and they are going to form an empire. So in north, the prominent ones will be Kushan. In Deccan, the prominent ones will be Satvahans. And when we are coming to south, Sangam age will become important here. Sangam age. And in Sangam age, we'll talk about three prominent dynasties, Chola, Chera and Pandya. Again, in Sangam age also, what you need to keep in mind, UPSC is asking about sites, details of Sangam literature and terminology. Okay, when you study Sangam age in detail also, we study this limitation that we don't know a lot about the rulers. Why? Because of the absence or paucity of sources in that particular context. So when you are studying post-Mauryan period, please study it from cultural perspective in a detailed manner. In prelims also, that is forming majority of the questions, and in mains as well, you will find that questions are coming majorly from cultural perspective. Even if they are asking you about rulers, they are asking you about cultural contribution of rulers. So questions have been asked: cultural contribution of Guptas and Cholas, cultural contribution of Krishna Deva Raya, a separate question on cultural contribution of Chola, another question on cultural contribution of Pallavas of Kanchi. So 4 questions in the last 10 years, you will see they have been asked about the rulers, but in which sense? Cultural contribution. Okay, so we know where we have to put our focus. I hope this is clear. Now let us discuss about them one by one. Have you done the revision? Post-Mauryan period? करके आए हैं? See, you have to revise your foundation notes because this is a fast track course. Okay, you will be able to catch up better if you have already revised. We are doing the revision here, but there will be a lot of value addition as well. So you will be able to catch up properly if you have already done a revision. Okay, and here things will become more consolidated. Okay, chalo, let us start. When we are talking about Indo-Greeks, which is the text which becomes important? Milinda Panho. UPSC has already asked a question on this. In Indo-Greeks, there is this text, Milinda Panho. Who has composed Milinda Panho? Do you know the name? Nag Sen. Is Nagasen and Nagarjun the same? What is written in NCERT? Do you remember? There is this line in NCERT that Nagasen composed Milinda Panho, who is also known as Nagarjun. But that statement is partially true. Nagasen composed Milinda Panho, but Nagasen is not Nagarjun. Their identities are different. Okay, so in NCERT also, if there is a particular place where we require to update it, do the updation, because when you are revising it from examination perspective, you might read that You might forget the discussion in the class. So that is why keep updating the information in the book as well. Okay, so what is the debate? See, again, when we are talking about ancient India, there is very limited information about the personalities who have composed various texts. So, at various junctures, we confuse identities. And there was this time when it was being said that Nagasena and Nagarjun are the same, but they are different people. When we are talking about Nagasen, he lived in BCE wala period. When we are talking about Nagarjun, he lived in around 2nd century CE. And Nagarjun is said, Nagarjun, Nagarjun, he is somebody who is associated with the Madhyamika school of Buddhism, and he has propounded the philosophy of Shunyavad. Okay, so he is a different person and Nagasena is a different person. Nagasena composed Milinda Panhu. What is Milinda Panhu? So it is about the questions of King Milind or Menander regarding Buddhism and answers that Nagasena provided him with. Okay, so Milind is somebody who converted to Buddhism. So when somebody is being converted to a different philosophy or religion, they'll have a lot of questions to ask. Okay, so he asked a lot of questions regarding Buddhist philosophy, and and Nagasena gave him answers. It is a text about that. When we talk about Nagarjun, do we know of any important text which he has composed? Pragya Paramita Sutra. If you don't know about these texts, please keep writing it down. Pragya Paramita Sutra. That is the text that Nagarjuna composed. So both of them are different people and both of them composed different texts. Is this clear? So remember this about Indo-Greeks. When we are talking, so this is the contribution in the field of literature. If we talk about their other contributions, one contribution comes in the field of coins. What is that contribution? Gold coins. So what is significant about it? There are two tricky statements involving gold coins. They are the first rulers to issue gold coins in India. When you will read the chapter on Kushan in your NCRT, you will find a similar kind of, not the same but similar kind of statement. In large number. The line that has been written, Kushanas were the first rulers to issue gold coins at large scale. What is the difference? At large scale. If the statement is given, Indo-Greeks were the first rulers to issue gold coins, that will be a correct statement. But if it is written at large scale, it would become a wrong statement. When we are talking about gold coins, that is why our concept should be clear. Okay, now let us write about it here. When we are talking about gold coins, we talk about three rulers in this context. One, we talk about Indo-Greeks. Second, we talk about Kushan. And third, we talk about Guptas. Indo-Greeks would be the first rulers to issue gold coins in India. Kushanas would be the first ruler to issue gold coins in India at large scale. Guptas will be issuing more coins in comparison to Kushanas. So number of gold coins is increasing. If we talk about the purity, a comparison is often drawn between Kushan and Gupta coins, that the highest quality in terms of purity was of Kushan gold coins. Is this clear? So remember this difference. Now Indo-Greeks are also going to be the first ruler to issue the portrait of rulers on coins. If the statement is written, Indo-Greeks were the first indigenous rulers to issue portraits of kings on their coins. Would that be a right statement? No. These people are not indigenous, they were migrants. So they are the ones to issue the portrait of kings on coins for the first time. But Satvahans are going to be the first indigenous rulers to issue portrait of kings on their coins. So these kind of differences we should be clear about. I hope this is clear. So in terms of coin, please remember them. What are the tricky statements? Remember that as well. When we are talking about literature, remember the difference between Nagasena and Nagarjun. Nagasena is belonging to this period. He has composed Milinda Panhu. Nagarjun is belonging to the period of CE, composing Pragya Paramita Sutra. Is that much clear? Now, if we talk about their other contribution, when sculptures are going to be made in Gandhar school of art, some of the influences are going to come from these rulers also. So Greek influence will also be present there. Okay, so contribution in the development of Gandhar school of art. They are the ones introducing the concept of curtains in Indian dramas. If you look at the Hindi or Sanskrit term, that is Yavanika. For curtain, when we see drama, नाटक देखने जाते हैं, तो जब नाटक देखने जाते हैं तो क्या होता है? पर्दा गिरता है, फिर सीन चेंज होता है, there is a change of scene and then the curtain is pulled. तो फिर से कर्टन उठाते हैं, फिर वो दूसरा सीन होता है, फिर कर्टन गिराते हैं, ऐसे करके होता है. When before these people, when natikas or nataks used to be performed, there was no concept of Yavanika. So it is said that Yavanika is being introduced by these people. So Greek माने, Greek को हिंदी में या संस्कृत में कहते हैं यवन. So from that the term Yavanika is coming. We translate it in English as curtain. Okay, so that is also something which is being popularized by these people in Indian subcontinent when dramas are being performed. If we want to use the Sanskrit terminology, natak, or the shorter ones are natikas. Is this clear? So remember these cultural contributions when we are talking about Indo-Greeks. Now let us come to the Shakas. When we are talking about Shaka rulers, here what becomes important about them, that they were settled in various branches. Which branch becomes important for us historically? Western Kshatrapa branch. Okay, so which was settled in the region of present day Gujarat. Whenever they'll become stronger, they are going to expand their area of influence. Otherwise, they'll remain limited, particularly in the area of present day Kathiawar. Is that clear? They are going to be the rulers who came at this point of time. Their sphere of influence will get reduced, but they were able to survive somehow. Okay, so that is another thing. Now here, if we talk about them, there is one ruler, Rudradaman. We should remember the name of Rudradaman in terms of a cultural legacy that he has left. Why Rudradaman becomes important? He repaired the Sudarshan Lake. Okay. How do we get to know about the Sudarshan Lake? Junagadh inscription. That is very important. Junagadh inscription. We call this particular inscription a Prashasti. What is the meaning of a Prashasti? UPSC asks terms. Yes. No, Prashasti is a particular kind of inscription where political and cultural contribution of rulers are mentioned, especially in an exaggerated manner. Okay, that will be called a Prashasti. Prashansa mein likha hua. That will be a Prashasti. Okay, so this is a Prashasti, and we get to know about the political and cultural achievements of Rudradaman by looking at this particular inscription. If we talk about this inscription, it is very important for India in literary context as well. Why? It is the first long inscription to be written in chaste Sanskrit. these two terms become important. First, long inscription inscribed in chaste Sanskrit. If you look at longer inscriptions before this, we find the name of Ashok. There we find language, Prakrit prominently, or Greek and Aramaic. Okay, here we are finding a long inscription in Sanskrit language. I had given you the reference of that book, Sheldon Pollock, Language of Gods in the World of Men. Now what is happening? Sanskrit language is becoming the language of the court as well. And it is very interesting to note who is making Sanskrit the language of the court. It is often people who are migrants. If you look at the indigenous rulers, you have already studied about Satvahans. What was their language? Prakrit. They are using Prakrit in their inscriptions. Look at Sangam rulers, Tamil. So they are using Tamil or Prakrit. Sanskrit is being used by people who have migrated to Indian subcontinent, rulers who have migrated to Indian subcontinent, be it Shakas, be it Kushanas. So what is happening here? That they are people who did not belong to Indian subcontinent. They are migrants. So they would also need legitimacy for their rule. Who will give them that legitimacy? Particularly the Brahmin class. When they are going to give them legitimacy, they would want for patronage. Okay, so this is something which is happening here, and this is how they are going to be included in a Varna system. Vratya, this is a term that you must have come across. Vratya Kshatriya, fallen Kshatriya. This is a term that we need to remember from prelims perspective. So Vratya Kshatriya, that means fallen Kshatriya. So Brahmins will say that, see, these are the people who did not follow their dharma, who did not follow their duty. That is why we had kicked them out. Now see, they are coming back. They are following the dharma. So they are Kshatriyas but fallen Kshatriyas. So that is a term which we'll see. Inclusion of people of different identities in Varna system. In that context, the term Vratya Kshatriya is used. We talked about formation of various jatis. One method was intervarna marriages. The other method was inclusion of people of different identities. ये brief में हमने आपको बताया था that these are the ways. So inclusion, we see it here. Is this clear? So remember this particular term as well. Now coming to Junagadh Prashasti, first long inscription in chaste Sanskrit. That is one importance. Second, it gives us details about the political achievements of Rudradaman, that Rudradaman had defeated Satavahan rulers. Okay. Another information that we get to know is about the repair of Sudarshan Lake, which was built by one of the Mauryan officials. Okay. So we should remember these details about Rudra Daman and his Junagadh Prashasti or inscription. See, now wherever you are studying about some important rulers and their inscriptions, that is also something that you should remember ideally. Why? Because UPSC is asking questions on inscriptions. They have asked about Ashokan inscriptions. They might ask you about Rudradaman's inscription or Samudragupta's Prashasti or the Prashasti of Pulakeshin II. So we should know about the important inscriptions as well. Not all the inscriptions, but at least important ones we should be knowing. Is this clear? So remember this when we are talking about Shakas. Now the next one, Parthians. So there you can remember that when Gondopharenus was ruling, Saint Thomas had came to India with the motive of spreading Christianity. That is one statement that you can remember from that particular time period. Now the most important ones for us are the Kushanas. Okay, you will find questions on them. Again, not direct questions on rulers, but cultural achievements. When we are talking about Kushanas, who were they? So they were tribal people. They came from Central Asia. They belonged to Yuchi tribe. That is the background of Kushanas. Now when they are coming to Indian subcontinent, what kind of cultural contribution did they make? Patronage to Buddhism. Okay, so a particular religion they are patronizing. See, when we are talking about rulers, we should know the name of Kanishka for sure. There is another ruler, Bhima Kadphises. We find his sculpture from Mat. Which area is Mat? Present day Mathura. See, when we are talking about UPSC examination in prelims, it gives you the ancient names as well. You might be familiar with the modern names. You might not be familiar with the ancient names, but you need to know the ancient names as well. And mostly they are not present in NCERT. So you should know that information from class. So when we are talking about their capitals, they had a capital at Peshawar, present day Peshawar, then known as Purushapur. The second probable capital was Mat, present day Mathura. Okay, so that we should remember, Purushapur and Mat. Now, when we are talking about these people, they had a very large empire, which is present in northern India, some parts of eastern India as well, some parts of China as well, present day Pakistan, Afghanistan, and some parts of Central Asia as well. So they formed a very large empire. That is what we know about them. The important rulers, you can remember the name of Bhima Kadphises. You should remember the name of Kanishka. That is where we cannot lack. Okay. So there are some contributions which are comprehensive, culminative contributions of Kushanas in general. There are some things that Kanishka is attributed with separately on an individual basis. So we should know both the things. So let us talk about first the common contributions. What are they contributing to it? What did they do? Apart from patronizing different religions, particularly Buddhism. Art, okay, Gandhar School of Art, Mathura School of Art. What else? Trade and commerce, okay, economic contributions. Yes, what are you saying? Shak Samvat, okay, that is 78, we'll talk about that. What else? Is there significant in terms of the dressing sense? What? Long cap, long coat, long boots. That is something that they are introducing here and making it popular as well. Okay. When it comes to popularizing the use of horse in army, what is the kind of contribution that they are making? Saddle, stirrup. Do you know what these things are? गाना सुना है, लकड़ी की काठी, काठी का घोड़ा. तो जो काठी होता है जिसके ऊपर, let's say if this is the horse, if you are using horse in warfare, you need to stabilize yourself on the horse. So to stabilize, because the horse runs really fast. So to stabilize yourself on the horse, you need to put a seat here. So if you are installing a seat, that is called saddle. You need to stabilize your feet also. बैठ गए हैं, घोड़ा बहुत तेज भाग रहा है, तो पैर कहाँ जा रहा है, घोड़ा कहाँ है, पता नहीं होगा. So stirrups, okay, to stabilize the feet here. So saddle and stirrup, and you are in control of the horse to ensure that they are popularizing the use of reins, lagam. Okay, so they are contributing towards popularizing horse as a primary war animal in Indian subcontinent by popularizing the use of saddle, stirrup and reins. That is also one contribution that they are making. They are the ones who are going to issue gold coins of high purity. That will be another contribution. They are going to popularize the use of red ware. So red pottery they'll popularize here, it does not mean that other kinds of potteries will cease to exist. They are also going to exist, but redware pottery will become more popular. They are going to popularize glass industry in Indian subcontinent. So a lot of their contributions are economic also and cultural as well. They are going to patronize Sanskrit language. Okay, so that is also one contribution in the field of sculpture making. So they are going to make statues of rulers as well. That is one tradition that we see from Kushanas onwards. So if you go to Mathura Museum today, you will find the sculpture, stone sculpture of Bhima Kadphises as well as a stone sculpture of Kanishka. How do we know that those sculptures are of Bhima Kadphises and Kanishka? There is an inscription beneath it. So it is written that this is the statue of Bhima Kadphises or of Kanishka. So that is another cultural contribution. They are contributing various religious orders here, particularly Buddhism. They are patronizing the growth of art and architecture as well. In terms of art, they are going to patronize making of various statues, various sculptures of gods as well as yakshas and yakshis, of kings too. When we are talking about architecture, they are going to patronize the making of stupas, chaityas, viharas. We saw one picture of Kanishka's stup as well when we were looking at the pictures from Mohenjo-daro. Okay, so they are going to make all these contributions. If there are general statements about Kushan's contributions, cultural contributions, I hope you will be able to solve that. Those questions have not been asked yet. बहुत ज़्यादा simple है, मगर अगर कभी पूछा, क्योंकि कोई question simple भी होते हैं, ठीक है? Now let us go into the specifics. When we are talking about Bhima Kadphises, he was somebody who worshipped Shiv and he issued gold coins of high purity. Those two facts you need to remember about him. Coming to Kanishka, what is important about Kanishka? So apart from all the things that we just discussed, those things are going to be applicable to Kanishka as well. Okay. Apart from that, what are the contributions that he is making? Has he patronized any scholar? Ashwa Ghosh. What are the writings of Ashwa Ghosh? सही बोल रहे हैं आप, बोलिए. सौंदर्य नंदन, yes. What else? बुद्ध चरित्र. सबसे फेमस तो बुद्ध चरित्र है, बायोग्राफी ऑफ बुद्ध. So he patronized Ashwa Ghosh, who composed Buddha Charita, Saundaranand, Mahalankar, Vajrasuchi. All these are writings of Ashwa Ghosh. If we say Kavya Alankar, because this is where students get confused. Mahalankar जो है वो रचना है अश्व घोष की. अगर काव्य अलंकार दे दे, because this had happened in one of the questions on literature, UPSC had given काव्य अलंकार और बहुत सारे लोग कंफ्यूज हो गए महालंकार. काव्य अलंकार is a text composed by Bhamah. Mahalankar is a text composed by Ashwa Ghosh. So remember these texts which are being composed by Ashwa Ghosh. He also patronized Nagarjuna. Who is Nagarjuna? अभी डिस्कस किया. Who was Nagarjuna? A philosopher belonging to Madhyamika sect of Buddhism, and he composed Pragya Paramita Sutra. Okay, he Charak was his court physician, so he also patronized Charak. What is the composition of Charak? Which one? Charak Samhita. It's a text on medical sciences. Does it also mention about chemistry? सर्जरी तो ठीक है, मेंशन करेगा, मेडिकल साइंस के ऊपर टेक्स्ट है, बट will the text also contain information on chemistry? Why? Making of medicines. The kind of division that we study now, it is very much a colonial construct. Because before that, if you look at the philosophers, they are also writing literature, they are also talking about mathematics. So when we talk about knowledge tradition, it was not rigidly divided in ancient India or in ancient world as well. Okay, the strict division was not there. The categorization is happening mostly in 18th, 19th century. What will see when you will encounter something new, you will and at that point of time you might find it very overwhelming. I'll give you a very relatable example. When you decide to appear for an examination like UPSC CSC, it has a very vast syllabus. We get overwhelmed कि भाई क्या है, कितना पढ़ेंगे, इतने सारे stages हैं, how are we even going to be able to tackle it? What do we do? कितने stages हैं, कितने papers हैं, एक पेपर में कौन कौन सा सब्जेक्ट है, उस सब्जेक्ट का कितना सब डिविजन है, उस सब डिविजन में कितने टॉपिक्स हैं. It seems a bit doable. So we are categorizing the information to make ourselves able to understand that syllabus, to be able to tackle that information that we have been flooded with. It's a human tendency. What started happening eventually especially in 18th 19th century, that Europeans were coming across a lot of new societies, new traditions. When they are going colonizing parts of world, they are coming across various such information and they'll be overwhelmed with information. To build a proper understanding, they'll start categorizing the knowledge tradition. Why am I giving you so much information on this categorization process? UPSC asks about texts. If any such statement has been given, let's say a text like Natya Shastra. Who composed Natya Shastra? Bharat Muni. What is the subject matter of Natya Shastra? Shad Darshan, you are saying? It's a text on performing arts. Okay, it's a text on performing arts. That means dance tradition, music tradition, literary tradition, these things will be there. So whatever can be sung, whatever can be danced upon, those performing arts are going to be present in Natya Shastra. If there is a statement that Natya Shastra talks about urbanism, Natya Shastra talks about city dwellers, would it be a right statement or a wrong statement? It will be a right statement. Why? It's very logical. If Natya Shastra is talking about performing arts, it is also going to talk about audience. It is also going to talk about the setting in which these performing arts are being performed. So it's very obvious that it is going to also mention about the city dwellers, urban spaces. That is why I have given this 5 minutes ka lecture to you in FTPC as well. So that you have this understanding that when we are talking about ancient Indian texts, they are not rigidly divided. Ki point 1 se point 10 tak jana hai, it doesn't work that way. These texts are very detailed. They are talking about the cultural milieu in which they have been composed. Okay, so we need to have this basic information with us. So when we are talking about a text like Charak Sanghata, as rightly pointed out by him, that this text is going to mention about chemistry. Why? Making of medicines. How, what kind of element should be present in which of the medicines. Botany, information on botany will be present there, कि कौन सा herb use करेंगे, कितना use करेंगे, ये सारा information भी हमको मिलेगा चरक संहिता में. ठीक है. So if these kind of statements are made in your prelims examination, be a bit mindful before making a cross with it. Okay, कि गलत नहीं है, हमने पढ़ा है कि चरक संहिता is a medical treatise, but it will also mention details related to chemistry or botany. Is this clear? So here we know about the names of 3 prominent scholars in different fields, in the field of literature, in the field of philosophy, in the field of medical sciences. So Kanishka is patronizing people belonging to literary tradition, belonging to philosophical tradition, belonging to medical field. Is this clear? So this is something that we need to remember about him specifically. Apart from this, he is also somebody who is going to start the Shaka Samvat after defeating the Shakas. So 78 CE. That is another detail that you can remember. He gave huge patronage to Buddhism. Okay. So CE. Vikram Samvat is in BCE. Okay. So when we are talking about Kanishka, he gave huge patronage to Buddhism. हमने दो नाम already देखे हैं. We looked at the name of Ashwaghosh, who composed the biography of Buddha Charita. He composed Saundarananda, again another Buddhist text. We saw him patronizing Nagarjun, a philosopher belonging to Madhyamika school of Buddhism, who also composed Pragya Paramita Sutra. So that is another information that we need to know. He is patronizing Buddhist scholars. He is patronizing Buddhist religion in the context of he provided patronage to the fourth Buddhist council. Okay, so Ajatashatru, Kalashok, Ashok, and the fourth one is Kanishka. So they have provided patronage to subsequent Buddhist councils. Now that is another information that you can remember. Apart from that, you should know that he is the one providing huge patronage to Gandhar School of Art as well as Mathura School of Art. He is patronizing building of various stupas, chaityas and viharas. So patronage to art and architecture, that is the basic information that we need to remember about Kanishka. Is this much clear? So remember this when we are talking about Kanishka. Now, if we talk about their administrative setup, what kind of administrative system did they have for smooth functioning of administration? कुछ तो बताइए, कैसे करते थे अपना एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन रन? हाँ, उस पर डिबेट है, लेकिन जो मोस्ट मान्यता है वो यही है. ठीक है, उस पर काफी सारा डिबेट है. चलिए ये बताइए एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव, वो बुद्धिज्म के साथ पढ़ेंगे. If there is a, let's say after Buddha died, what happened that there was this issue of compilation of Buddhist texts की orality, सब कुछ orally टीच कर रहे थे, तो सब कुछ कंपाइल कर लिया जाए. फिर क्या बुद्ध ने पढ़ाया उसको लेकर के डिबेट होने लग जाएगा. कुछ लोग कुछ बोलेंगे, कुछ लोग कुछ बोलेंगे. तो they'll sit together and they'll either come to a settlement or they'll split. तो इस तरीके से होता है. That we are going to study separately. What was the administrative setup of Kushanas? याद है कुछ? Satrap system. Okay. Satrap system. What is Satrap system? At the back. कुछ याद है? कैसे एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन होता था? System is monarchical. See, understand these things. System is monarchical. The area will be divided into various provinces. Okay, they are going to be further divided into smaller district. English में हम उसको district कह लेते हैं. अलग अलग time पे अलग अलग word use होगा. Further divided into various villages. So when we are talking about Satrap system, an official will be appointed at provincial level, and that official will have two responsibilities: one, collection of revenue, and second, maintaining a certain number of troops. Okay, so when we are talking about collection of revenue, a part of it can be their salary, a part of it can be spent on the maintenance of troops, a part of it has to be sent to the state. Okay, if you look at the later systems also, only the name is going to change. When we'll talk about feudalism, this system is going to be applicable there as well. When we'll talk about the Iqtidari system, this system is going to be applicable there as well. So understand things conceptually, only the terminology will change more often. Is this clear? So satrap system is present here, through which they are running their administration smoothly. Now, if we talk about the titles that they are taking, what kind of titles were they taking? Ashok took the title of Devanam Piya Piyadasi. What about Kushanas? They are taking the title of a Maharaja Dhiraj. They are also taking humble titles like Devaputra. So they are saying that we are sons of God, and that seems to be a Chinese influence. Okay, so Maharaja Dhiraj and Devaputra were the prominent titles that Kushanas were taking. Now, if we come to the economic setup during Kushana period, what was the economic setup? Agriculture is going to be the same. What is changing? Is there something different when we are talking about craft production? Redware pottery, popularization of redware pottery, glass industry, they'll popularize. So that is something which is different. Other things are going to remain more or less the same. When we are talking about trade, is there something different? Silk route. When we are talking about Kushanas, silk route will become important. So when we are using the term silk route, it is a chain of various roads which are connecting Asia, this part of Asia, eastern part of Asia with Central Asia. So a chain of roads, they were named as silk route, not during Kushan period, in later times. So when we are talking about this silk route, Kushanas are going to have control over it because they are ruling in North India, they are ruling in northern western frontier provinces, they are also controlling some parts of China and Central Asia. So due to their control over silk route, they are going to make huge profit from this particular trade which was happening at that point of time. So other things are going to remain more or less the same. The items of import, export, balance of trade being in favor of India, there we don't find changes. But when we are talking about silk route, this is an additional information. Silk route being controlled by Kushanas, that is another additional information that you need to remember. Is this clear? ये रूट इस समय बहुत ज्यादा पॉपुलराइज हो रहा है. व्हेन वी आर यूजिंग द टर्म सिल्क रूट, इट इज बीइंग नेम्ड एज सिल्क रूट इन 18th सेंचुरी. अभी ये नाम नहीं है. जितना ज्यादा प्रॉस्पेरिटी होगा उतना ज्यादा ट्रेड बढ़ेगा, उतनी ज्यादा सड़कें बनेंगी. ठीक है, तो इस वक्त में बहुत ज्यादा बड़ी मात्रा में यहाँ पे ट्रेड हो रहा है. बिकॉज इफ यू थिंक अबाउट ट्रेड विद सेंट्रल एशिया, सी अर्लियर वी हैड हड़प्पन सिविलाइजेशन which was trading with the contemporaries. Then we talked about the second phase of urbanization. So when we were talking about that phase, there were Mahajanpadas. कोई एक बहुत बड़ा empire तो नहीं था. But at this point of time, we have an empire. So they are going to patronize making of various routes as well. Okay, so that is how the volume of trade will eventually increase. शेरशाह बाद में होगा ना, यहां थोड़ी होगा. कुशान के वक्त तो बना ही नहीं है ना. ठीक है, तो कुशान के वक्त तो कुशान वाले रोड्स का बात करेंगे. समझ रहे हैं? अरे जब बनाया ही शेरशाह सूरी ने है तो कुशान के वक्त कैसे आएगा? एक बार चेक कीजिए जहां से पढ़ा है आपने. जीटी रोड, ग्रैंड ट्रक रोड, दैट वाज बिल्ट बाय शेरशाह सूरी. ठीक है, एक बार चेक कर लीजिए, एनसीईआरटी भी देख लीजिए, उसमें भी दिया हुआ है ये इन्फॉर्मेशन. जीटी रोड इज बीइंग बिल्ट ड्यूरिंग सूरी पीरियड. द स्पेसिफिक नेम इज ऑफ शेरशाह सूरी. चलें, किसी और को डिफरेंट पता है क्या? क्या पता मैं गलत हूं? Uttar Path and Dakshin Path, they are the names which are being used. That is not the GT road. Uttar Path क्या है कि यहाँ से जो रूट जाएगा उत्तर पथ हो जाएगा कि यहाँ से लेके यहाँ बंगाल तक जाएगा. दक्षिण पथ क्या हो जाएगा, दक्षिण में जो रूट होगा वो दक्षिण पथ हो जाएगा. तो सातवाहन्स आर कॉलिंग देमसेल्व्स स्वामी ऑफ दक्षिण, दैट दे आर द वंस हु आर कंट्रोलिंग दिस रूट. ओके, एक जगह का इंफॉर्मेशन क्रोनोलॉजिकली हम दूसरे जगह पे इम्पोज नहीं कर सकते. नेम्स विल बी डिफरेंट. उसी रूट पे रोड कंस्ट्रक्ट कर रहा है, दैट इज अ डिफरेंट थिंग, बट वी कैन नॉट यूज दैट नेम इन एंशिएंट पीरियड. इज दिस क्लियर? चले अब यहाँ आते हैं. यहाँ हमने क्या बात किया था? वी टॉक्ड अबाउट द इकोनॉमी. नाउ इफ वी हैव टू कम टू इन इकोनॉमी, रिमेंबर वन मोर थिंग, दैट दे आर ट्रेडिंग विद रोमन्स. Roman Empire became a very prominent empire during this period. So when we are talking about post-Mauryan period, be it Kushanas, be it Satvahans, be it Sangam period people, they are going to trade with Romans. When we will talk about Guptas as well, Guptas will also trade with Romans. With the decline, when Gupta Empire was declining, it was the very same period when Roman Empire was also witnessing decline. So after that, you will come across specific name. Till the time of post-Mauryan period and Gupta period, you will use the term trade with Roman Empire. Is this clear? Now let us come to the society. What is changing in society? Is something changing in society? So inclusion of various identities. When we are talking about Varna system and caste system, in that what is happening? Inclusion of various identities in a Varna system, formation of more jatis or caste. That is one thing which is changing. When we come to the condition of women, that is going to remain the same, more or less it is going to be the same. Okay, so there we don't need to add anything extra. We need to remember the term of Vratya Kshatriya. Is that clear? So remember that particular term. When we are talking about religion, what will become important here? Existence of various religions, but primary patronage by Kushanas went to Buddhism. Okay, that is one thing that we can remember. They are patronizing Brahmanism as well at certain points, but prominent patronage is going to Buddhism. What about culture? Language? Sanskrit. When we are talking about Ashwaghosh, he is writing the biography of Buddha in Sanskrit language. So Sanskrit has become very important as a courtly language as well. And here we also see use of Sanskrit in Buddhist texts. When we will study Buddhism, then I will refer back to this point. Okay. So Sanskrit was a prominent language by this particular time. What are the important texts? Ashwaghosh, Ashwaghosh का बुद्ध चरित, सौंदर्यनंद, महाअलंकार, वज्रसूची, नागार्जुन, प्रज्ञा पारमिता सूत्र, चरक, चरक samhita. During this time, not under the patronage of Kushanas, but during this time, we also find Natya Shastra being composed by Bharat Muni. Is this clear? Is there another important text which was being composed during this time? Kama Sutra. So Vatsyayan's Kama Sutra was also being composed during this particular time. So these two names you can remember as well. Is this much clear? So remember these things from this particular period. What kind of questions have been asked from this period? So UPSC recently, I am talking about the last 10 years, UPSC has asked a question on Nagarjun. Okay, so they had given Nagarjun with Milinda Panhu. That was one question which was asked. One question was asked on Pragya Paramita Sutra. Okay, so we can understand questions are being asked on literature. In mains, this topic again remains very relevant, Gandhar and Mathura School of Art. We will revise it from prelims perspective when we will study Buddhism. Because comprehensively we are going to do that topic, philosophy, literature, then art, architecture, what are the kind of architecture and school of art, all of that we will do together. Okay. No, it is a text which has been composed over a period of 400 years. So 200 BCE to 200 CE, that is the timeline that has been accorded to Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra also and Kama Sutra as well. Okay, so we need to understand when we are talking about texts belonging to Shastric tradition, they have taken a huge amount of time to be composed. We know them by the time of compilation. Now, when we are talking about a text like Kama Sutra, again, it is a general misconception that it is a text only about sexual activities and Ganikas. It also gives us a lot of information about prevalent time period, that society, urbanization, what kind of people were living in the cities, what kind of art forms were present. All this information is present in a Kama Sutra as well. We find a particular category of Ganika in Kama Sutra. When we talk about the term Ganika, in English it has been translated as a prostitute. But when we look at the institution of Ganika, it is not limited to only this particular aspect. Ganikas used to be women who were masters in various art forms, who were economically independent, and who were held in high regard when it comes to cultural aspects of life. So the term, the English translation does not do justice with the institution of Ganika. We should know all these other aspects as well. Is this clear? So 200 BCE to 200 CE. That is the prominent terminology that has been accorded. Okay. चले, इसमें भी आप देखेंगे ना बहुत सारा डिबेट है, बहुत सारे अलग अलग स्कॉलर्स हैं, लिंग्विस्ट्स हैं, who give different terminologies, different chronologies to different texts. That remains true in the context of Mahabharata as well, Ramayana as well. That is a purely academic debate. We don't have to go there. UPSC also understands this problem. You will not find questions on chronology of texts in that context. Yes. Because it has been composed over a period of time. तभी तो देंगे ना. Addition होना चाहिए ना. देखिए, जब हम क्रोनोलॉजी की, जब हम डेटिंग की बात करते हैं, इट इज़ अ होल अदर डिसिप्लिन, जहाँ पे लिंग्विस्ट्स जो हैं वो पढ़ते हैं कि कौन सी लैंग्वेज है, किस तरीके से लिखा गया है. अब जिस तरीके से हिंदी 18th सेंचुरी में लिखी जाती थी, जब शुरुआत 19th सेंचुरी में लिखी जाती थी, उस तरीके से 21st में तो नहीं लिखी जाती. अ लॉट ऑफ टर्म्स हैव एंटर्ड द हिंदी लैंग्वेज. वी टॉक अबाउट सिंप्लीफिकेशन एज वेल. तब संस्कृत निष्ठ हिंदी की बात कर रहे थे, अभी हिंदुस्तानी लैंग्वेज का कुछ हिस्सा आ जाता है. तो अगर कोई टेक्स्ट किस वक्त पे कंपोज हुआ है, उसमें कौन से शब्द हैं, उससे इस चीज का वो एक तरीका है लिंग्विस्ट्स जिससे आइडेंटिफाई करते हैं. ओके, सो इट इज अ टोटली डिफरेंट डिसिप्लिन. वी डोंट हैव टू गो देयर. ओके, वी जस्ट नीड टू नो अबाउट द इंपॉर्टेंट टेक्स्ट्स हियर. ओके, चले, इतना क्लैरिटी है आपको. Remember the important texts from this period. Remember the important art forms. That is something that we are going to discuss separately with the topic of Buddhism. That is what remains very important from Kushan age. The general cultural contributions as well you should be remembering, both from prelims as well as mains perspective. क्योंकि mains में पूछ रहे हैं cultural contribution of rulers, so they might ask a question on the cultural contribution of Kushanas or on cultural contribution of Mauryas or various other dynasties as well. So I hope this is clear. Now if we move to Deccan, there which one is the prominent kingdom? Satvahans. What do you know about Satvahans? Do you remember anything about them of cultural importance? बताइए, एक एक करके बताइए. हाँ, they were okay, they were also doing sea trade. ठीक है, हाँ. There are references to that. Okay, दो किंग्स के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में है. हाँ, anything else? They are calling themselves Brahmins. In that context, you see culture of contradiction in ancient India. According to Varna system, it has been suggested that only Kshatriyas should rule. Mauryans are not Kshatriyas. Kushanas are outsiders who are being incorporated in a Varna system. When we are talking about Satvahans, they themselves are saying that they are Brahmins. Guptas were Vaishyas. So there has been a culture of contradiction as well in ancient India. A very interesting book came out a few years ago of Dr. Rupinder Singh only, Cultures of Contradiction. And in that she is talking about all kind of contradictions that were present in ancient India. What normative texts are telling us and what the practical reality at times was. And at various junctures, they are in contradiction with each other. Okay, now let us talk about Satvahans. आप लोगों ने कल्चरल हिस्ट्री पढ़ी नहीं है कि भूल गए हैं? भूल गए? कल्चरल हिस्ट्री ही सबसे ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है. राजा का नाम भूल जाइए, कोई मसला नहीं है, पूछ ही नहीं रहे हैं ये लोग. कल्चरल कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन नहीं भूल सकते हैं. ठीक है, सो लेट अस टॉक अबाउट सातवाहन्स एंड देयर कल्चरल कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन. So when we are talking about Satvahans, there are a lot of debate over their origin as well. Some texts are going to say that they are having lowly origins. Some texts, so Andhra is the term that has been used in Puranas. So Puranas are saying they are of tribal origin. When we are looking at their inscriptions, they are claiming the identity of being a Brahmin. So the origin is debated. That is one thing that is there. We don't need to mug it up. Okay. Now, when we are talking about their contributions, we should remember the names of some of the important rulers. Why? Because they are patronizing certain texts. Do you remember any of the names before him? Simuk is said to be the founder. See, there was this ruler Satakarni first. Why Satakarni first is important? That is Kharavil. Here, Satakarni first is important because of Nanaghat inscription. There is one inscription, Nanaghat inscription, where we find the mention of political achievements of Satakarni first. Okay, so I told you about the important rulers and their inscriptions. That is one area that we should remember. Okay, so remember this Satakarni first, Nanaghat inscription, and in Nanaghat inscription, he is claiming that he is the ruler of Dakshina Path. He is the Swami of Dakshina Path. तो दक्षिण का स्वामी खुद को बता रहा है. Is this clear? So remember this inscription when it comes to Satakarni first. That is of cultural importance to us. What is going to be the language of the inscription? Prakrit. Okay, Prakrit is going to be the language of this inscription. Now after him, there is another ruler about whom we need to have an information. Hal. Why Hal is important? He composed Gatha Sapta Sati. So Gatha Sapta Sati is a text which has been ascribed to him. Again, a text in Prakrit about, and it is a collection of poetries. Poetry on love, on eroticism, that is going to be the basic subject. There is a very good English translation as well, which has been published by A.K. Malhotra, The Absent Traveller. If you are interested in poetry, you can try to read some ancient poetry as well, the English translation, if you don't know Prakrit. Otherwise, if you know Prakrit, you can obviously read that version as well. So Hala has composed Gatha Saptasati. His minister Gunadhya composed Vrihat Katha. Gunadhya. He composed Vrihat Katha. Again, Vrihat Katha has not survived in totality. It has survived in bits and pieces. Okay. So that is another text that we can remember. Language again is going to be Prakrit. Now let us come to the ruler that you have mentioned, Gautami Putra Satakarni. Whom was Gautami Putra Satakarni? Why does he become important? What is the importance? Gautami Putra Satkarni. See, Satavahans are going to be in constant conflict with the Shakas. Why? For the expansion of their territory. So there are two generations of Shakas and Satavahans. We find mention of political conflict between them. So when we are talking about Gautami Putra Satakarni, he was able to defeat the Shaka ruler Nahapan. How do we know about it? Because there are some of the coins bearing the name of Nahapana which were restruck. तो उसका coin उठाया, उसके ऊपर अपना नाम strike कर दिया. That is the way to show people that you have defeated someone. Okay, so we find this kind of reference when we are talking about Gautami Putra Satakarni defeated the Shakas and restruck their coins with his name. He called himself Eka Brahmana. That is another thing that you can remember. When we are talking about him, a very striking thing you can find is he is using the matronym. He is calling himself a Gautami Putra. Does that mean that society was matriarchal? A matriarchal society is the one where decision-making power lies with females. Okay. Here, the society is patriarchal. Of course, these kind of mistakes are often done by students. That is why I am emphasizing upon it. Society is matriarchal if decision-making ability, decision-making power is with women. Okay. Here we see decision-making power lied with men only because they are the ones who are rulers. The condition of women was a bit better, and that too of royal women. That is one thing that we can say when we are talking about Satavahan society. So they are using the matronym. They are not a matriarchal society. Who is Gautami? A woman who belonged to the Kula of Rishi Gautam. So again, it's not a specific name. She is known by the family she belongs to. Okay, so they are calling themselves Brahmana. So Rishi Gautam, उनके family से आने वाली स्त्री, उनका बेटा है. तो Gautami Putra Satakarni. Now his successor is going to be Vasishti Putra Pulvami. Again, Vasishti, a woman who is coming from the family of Rishi Vashishta. Okay, so Vashishti Putra Pulavami. What becomes important about him? He was defeated by the Shakas. Gautami Putra Satakarni defeated Shakas. Shakas defeated his successor Vasishti Putra Pulavami. Who was the Shaka ruler who defeated Satavahans? Rudradaman. Rudradaman's Junagadh Prashasti. In that inscription, we find the reference to him defeating Vasishti Putra Pulavami. Is this clear? So this is a constant conflict which is going on between the Shakas and Satavahans. At some point of time, Satavahans are emerging victorious. At some point of time, Shakas are emerging victorious. Is this much clear? समझ आ रहा है? What's the time? We can take a break. You seem tired. तो इसके बाद से फिर हम डिस्कस करते हैं आगे का. ठीक है? 15 minutes में we'll meet. So we had discussed some of the important rulers belonging to Satavahan period. If we want to remember it from prelims perspective, what do we have to keep in mind? The important literary texts that we discussed, be it associated with a particular ruler like Hal or his minister. So from this period, these two texts are important. Or the other thing that you need to remember is about important inscriptions. So Nanaghat inscription we should keep in mind, and the second inscription that we need to keep in mind is Junagadh inscription of Rudra Daman. Why? Because in that inscription he is also mentioning that he has defeated the Satavahan ruler Vashishti Putra Pulvami. So suppose if there is a statement in the examination that Satavahan kings have been mentioned in Rudra Daman Prashasti or Rudra Daman's inscription of Junagadh. So that would be a right statement. That is why I have explained you the meaning of the term Prashasti, that it is a particular type of inscription which talks about the political and cultural achievement of a ruler in an exaggerated manner. Okay, so both the things will be found there. So keep that in mind. Now, when we are talking about these people, we have discussed the rulers. Now, if we talk about the capitals, what are the sites which become important? Which site was their capital? Do you remember? So Pratishthan is one site, and they had two capitals, Pratishthan and Amravati. Has UPSC asked the name of Amravati? No, not in context of Satvans. They have given the term Dhanya Katak. 2023 paper, set A, the very first question, Dhanya Katak. Okay, so they had given the term Dhanya Katak, which was a flourishing center of Mahasanghika school of Buddhism. Often we know, so Mahasanghika is falling on the side of Mahayana. When we will discuss Buddhism, we will revise it. Okay, now when we are looking at the capital, if we know the ancient names, it helps us in solving a lot of questions. For example, in books you will find the term Vidisha. UPSC uses the term either Besnagar or Bhilsa. So Vidisha was known as Besnagar as well as Bhilsa. So in ancient period, Besnagar is the name which has been used. In medieval period, Bhilsa is the name which has been used. That is why I am saying we should be aware of the ancient names if there are any. Okay. So Dhanya Katak, also known as Dharani Kota and Amravati. This is the site which is going to be one of the capitals. Which is the second capital? Pratishthan, also known as Paithan. Okay, so the Sanskritized name is Pratishthan, and the earlier name which was being used in Pali and Prakrit sources, that is Paithan. From there only comes Paithani textile. If you look at art and culture, UPSC is very much interested in knowing about the textile tradition as well. So they have asked a question on Jari saris from Banaras. They have asked a question on Kalamkari when it comes to Andhra Pradesh area. They have asked a question on Jamdani as well. They can ask you about Paithani as well. So whenever you are studying about a particular site, if there is something of utmost importance in cultural sense, specifically related to textile tradition, you should know about that. Because if you look at UPSC questions, they are very much interested in knowing about a lot of textiles. A question on National Handloom Day was also asked. So we need to connect these dots together. Okay, and then we'll be able to be in a better position to answer various questions. What kind of shawls are famous, let's say, which one of them have GI index, which are the saris or painting traditions which are popular. So if we are talking about Paithan, from here we can remember Paithani saris, Maharashtra. Okay, so that is how we can link it, कि हमको हर चीज अलग से याद ना रखनी पड़े. ठीक है? So Paithan, also known as Pratishthan. That is another site that we need to keep in mind. Now let us discuss the other aspects. When we are talking about the administration, what kind of administrative system are they going to have? The very similar. They are also going to divide their empire into various provinces. Provinces will be divided into districts, further being divided into villages. Two terms we come across. One is Ahar in the context of denoting a provincial unit. The second term that we come across, again an administrative unit, Vishaya. So remember that when we are using the term Vishaya, it's not subject in ancient context. It is an administrative unit. Subject को कहते हैं ना हिंदी में विषय. वो logic नहीं लगाना है. If Vishaya has been given, our answer will be administrative unit. Ahar, administrative unit. Here, what was the system? Again, hereditary monarchy, and we find the practice of primogeniture being prevalent. Another fact that you can remember from Satvahans are the first rulers who started giving land grants to Brahmins. Okay. Now there are a lot of terms which I'll make you write down together in Chola period. Why? Because there are a lot of land grants which will be present during that period. So if you have written all the names together, it will be easier for you to revise. For this time, remember that they are the ones who started the practice of giving land grants to Brahmins. What was the nature of that land grant? What kind of rights were transferred to Brahmins with that land grant? Fiscal, administrative, and judicial. So these land grants, first they were tax free. Brahmins did not have to pay taxes on those lands. They were granted in perpetuity, that means forever. Third thing, they were granted with fiscal rights, that means revenue collection rights, and whatever revenue will be collected, it will be kept with the Brahmin. Administrative rights, that means the administrative setup will be decided by the Brahmin. Judicial rights, he will be the one to give justice in that area. So tax-free land grants in perpetuity with fiscal, administrative and judicial rights. Is this clear? This is the term that we need to remember, and all of these are key terms. Tax-free land grants in perpetuity, fiscal, administrative and judicial rights. Is this clear? So remember this. Now they are having good relations with Brahmin community, that means. Okay. At the same time, when we are talking about their administrative officials, Maharathi will become a prominent administrative officials. Maharathis had the privilege to maintain marriage alliances with the royal family. So what is happening? Land grants are also being given to the officials. Now, Maharathi had the right to give further land grants. That is why this category of official will become important. So, right to grant lands to different individuals and privilege to maintain marriage alliances with the royal family, because it was a privilege, it was not a right. Okay. So, here when we talk about Maharathis, they are a category of important officials having the right to grant lands to different people, having the privilege to establish matrimonial alliances with the royal family. I hope this much is clear. So this is something that you need to remember when we are talking about the administrative setup. Now, when we are coming to economic setup, what is different? Is there something which is unique here? So here we know that there are some scholars who say that these people were feudatories of Mauryas, that they were granted some land by the Mauryas, and from them they have learnt the art of administration and every other thing which is required to run an empire. This is a theory. There are various debates, that is why we are not going there. In UPSC, you need to know the absolute details, not the debated ones. UPSC does not ask questions on debated one. जहां पे clarity है वही पूछती है. अगर ज़्यादातर scholars किसी चीज़ को मानते हैं, for example, Harappan people did not know of horse. Majority of the scholars believe that. Nagarjuna and Nagasen were different. Majority of the scholars believe that. So these are the contested facts जिसके ऊपर पूछा जा रहा है. जहां पर opinion बहुत ज़्यादा divided है, those areas are not being touched. तो हमको उसमें जाना ही नहीं है. ठीक है. What we need to know that these people knew the art of paddy transplantation. किससे सीखा है उसमें जाने की जरूरत है नहीं. Paddy transplantation, what do we mean by that? That you have sowed the seed. जब छोटे छोटे plants आ जाते हैं तो उसको उखाड़ करके दोबारा transplant किया जाता है. तो if we are adapting this technique, the produce is much larger. So they knew the art of paddy transplantation and they were implementing that. In agriculture, that is one unique thing that we can remember. Technique is going to be more or less the same जो हम पहले के period से पढ़ते आ रहे हैं. So here we don't need to repeat that. If we talk about crafts people here, they have mentioned Gandhikas again and again. And Gandhikas were very proud of their caste identity. Who are Gandhikas? Perfume makers. Gandhika, gandh, smell से लेना देना है. So people who are perfume makers, they'll become Gandhikas. The surname Gandhi comes from their, तो व्यापारी हैं. Gandhika, perfume makers, they are very proud of their caste identity for whatever reason that they are not mentioning. But they are mentioning that we are very proud of our caste identity. So they were probably one of the important crafts people back then during Satavahan period. What else do we find here? We find minting of coins at large scale. And when we are finding their coins are made of various materials. We find silver coins, we find copper coins, we find lead coins, protein coins. So various denominations of coins. That is something which is present here. They are the first indigenous rulers to have the portrait of kings on their coins. Indo-Greeks are the first rulers. They are the first indigenous rulers. So that is another thing that we can remember about their coins. We find various kind of symbols on their coins. For example, they have depicted the symbol of Chaitya that tells us about their affiliation with Buddhism. They have put the symbol of ship. So ship is indicating towards sea trade, swastik or shankh indicating towards their affiliation to Hinduism. So they are patronizing both Hinduism as well as Buddhism. They are engaged in trade via sea link as well. So these are the things that we get to know when we are looking at their coins. So various denominations, various symbols, first indigenous rulers to have portrait of kings on their coins. Is this much clear? So this we have to remember when we are talking about trade. So they'll also be trading with Romans. Okay, that is one thing which is going to be common for Kushan, Satavahan and Sangam people as well. When we are talking about their society, what is happening in society? There are certain women, specifically royal women, who had higher status. So they might have more say in terms of decision making in their own lives. It does not mean that they are administratively important. So they might have certain access to property. They might have certain freedom in decision making for themselves. And where do we get this idea from? So when we are talking about Satakarni first, his mother is said to have a lot of property on her own name. So that is one reference that we come across. We see Gautami Putra Satakarni, Vashishti Putra Pulvami using metronyms with their names. So that tells us about the better, relatively better condition of royal women, not a general condition of all the women. So we need to keep this categorization in mind as well. Which category of women are we referring to? When we are looking at relatively better condition of royal women, that does not mean that society in general was liberal towards women. Is this clear? So other things with respect to women, they are going to remain more or less the same. When we are talking about Varna system, it was prevalent. When we are talking about Jati or caste system, again it was prevalent. So those things are going to be the same when we are talking about society. The caste of Gandhika, they have been mentioned again and again. So that is something which is striking when we are talking about society and crafts people. Coming to religion, so they are patronizing both Hinduism as well as Buddhism. So when it comes to Hinduism, what they are doing, they are performing Vedic sacrifices. What kind of sacrifices are more prominent? Ashwamedha sacrifice. Why horse sacrifice? Because it is related with the idea of expansion. So Ashwamedha sacrifice, Rajasuya sacrifice, they are going to be the prominent ones. They are performing Vedic sacrifices. They are giving tax-free land grants in perpetuity with fiscal, administrative and judicial rights to Brahmins. So patronage to Brahmanism, or later as we know it, Hinduism. Okay, when it comes to Buddhism, they are also patronizing Buddhism. So you don't see a rigidity here. That is an interesting thing to notice. In yesterday's class also we discussed this very idea that when we are talking about religious affiliation in ancient India, we find a lot of liberalism in that context. Rigidity is mostly absent. So here we see the same dynasty patronizing Brahmanism as well as Buddhism. What are some of the important Buddhist sites that we should remember? So here Mahayana, or to be very precise, Mahasanghika school of Buddhism will flourish. We'll talk about it comprehensively in the topic of Buddhism. Here remember patronage to Buddhism as well. What are the prominent sites here? Karle. So we started with Amravati, Dharni Kota, Dhanya Katak, that will be prominent. Amravati School of Art also developed during this time. We know the site of Nagarjun Konda. We should know the site of Karle, as you mentioned. We should know the site of Bhaja for sure. Bhaja has been repeatedly asked in UPSC examination. Okay, so site of Bhaja, Karle, site of Kanheri, they are very important when we are talking about Satvahans. If you go to Kanheri, if you go to Mumbai, you can visit the site of Kanheri. You will find depiction of various Satvahan rulers there as well. You will find a few inscriptions too. So again, that is a site which is very important as a Buddhist site and especially belonging to this particular period. So these are some of the sites that you can keep in mind when we are talking about Satvahans. When we are coming to culture, what culture? So this part is going to be present in culture as well. So making of stupas, chaityas, viharas, these are the prominent sites that we have discussed. Amravati School of Art, that will also flourish. So sculpture making tradition. Then if we come to literature, Halas, Gatha, Saptasati, we can remember. The other text, Gunadhya, Brihat, Katha, which has not survived in totality. Okay, what is the prominent language here? Prakrit. Okay, that is another thing that we should remember. What is the script? Brahmi. In Gupta period, Brahmi will develop into Nagari. Okay, here we still find Brahmi. From Brahmi only Nagari, Devanagari will come to that. Okay, तो gradually धीरे धीरे करके अलग अलग period में script will also develop. Is this much clear? So remember these things from Satavahan period. We'll do the questions together. सारा एक बार पढ़ लेते हैं ये वाला हिस्सा. Post modern and what is the time? We can start with Guptas also, and then we can do the questions collectively. Okay. So this is what we need to know about the Satavahan period. Now there were Shungas also. If we talk about indigenous ruler, what is important about Shungas? Pushyamitra Shunga is the one who was the founder of Shunga dynasty. What becomes important in his context, Pushyamitra Shunga was the person who had given patronage to Patanjali. Patanjali, who composed Mahabhasya. In UPSC there was a statement where they had given Pushyamitra Shunga patronized Panini. तो उन्होंने क्या किया था? उल्टा कर दिया था. पाणिनि को महापद्म नंद ने पेट्रोनाइज किया था. We discussed it yesterday when we are talking about Pushyamitra Shunga. He patronized Patanjali. Patanjali composed Mahabhasya. That is one important cultural thing that we should remember. When we look at Buddhist texts tell us that Pushyamitra Shunga broke all the 84,000 stupas that were constructed by Ashok. That is what Buddhist sources are telling us. Does that mean that Buddhism was not flourishing at all during his time? No. There is this very prominent stup, Barhut stup, which was built during this time. So they might be writing from a religious perspective as well, where they are ascribing making of a lot of stupas by one king and destroying all the stupas by the other king. There might be a possibility that he was hostile towards Buddhism, but this seems an exaggeration. बनाना भी उतना exaggeration लगता है और तोड़ना भी इतना exaggeration लगता है. ठीक है? So and we have another example of construction of Barhut Stoop. So it was a reality, not a possibility. It was a reality that Shungan rulers are not patronizing Buddhism. especially when we are talking about Pushyamitra Shunga. But Buddhism was flourishing during this time also, because people in general was giving patronage to Buddhism. So there are a lot of donative inscriptions which tells us about the donation made by common people, specifically groups of craftspeople, women, who were giving donations for building various stupas. So from this time period we can remember Barhut Stup. What else can we remember culturally from this period? His son Agnimitra, he becomes the subject of one of Kalidas's drama. So Kalidas composed a particular drama or natak called Malavika Agnimitra. So Malavika Agnimitra is a story, love story of Agnimitra, who was son of Pushyamitra Shunga, and Malavika. So again, we have talked about it, that various writers have derived inspiration from historical personalities and they have written various dramas. So Agnimitra and his love story also became a subject of one of ancient dramas, which was composed during Gupta period. Is this clear? So remember this much. Important texts, two texts we should remember: Patanjali Mahabhashya, Kalidas Malavika Agnimitra, which was composed during Gupta period, but the subject matter has been taken up from Shunga period. Is this clear? Then making of the Barhut Stup. Even though rulers were not patronizing Buddhism, people in general were giving huge patronage on individual level to the growth of Buddhism. Okay, I hope this much is clear. Now let us move to south. When we are going to south, in the areas of Deccan also, as well as South India, present-day Tamil Nadu, Kerala, we find huge megalithic burials. What are these megaliths? Mega, that means huge. Lith, that means stone. So there were huge megaliths. So there were burials, and then people were covering it with huge blocks of stone. So those kind of structures came to be known as megaliths. Is that a living tradition even now? If you go to northeast, you will find some of the tribes practice this tradition even now. Specifically, if you go to Mizoram, there you will find some of the tribes practicing megalithic culture. So they make huge, when they are burying, they make huge stone boulders there, and they are known as megaliths. So it's a living tradition in certain parts of India, specifically in tribal cultures. Okay, that is another thing that we can remember. This is the information that you should know from examination perspective. What are megaliths? What is the area where they are found? Is it a living tradition or not? Is this clear? Now the important part, from where UPSC has asked several questions, is Sangam age. What is the time period? Around 300 BCE to 300 CE. That is the time period. Now when we are talking about Sangam age, we need to understand what is being asked. Again, either they will ask you, they have asked about sites, they have asked the details of Sangam literature. They have not asked you names. They have asked you what is present in Sangam literature, both in prelims as well as in mains. Okay, in mains they had asked one question on Sangam literature in 2013. After that, they have not asked this particular topic in mains, but in prelims, it is a recurrent topic. Okay, so sites, literary tradition, and important terminologies. That is something we should know. Keeping that in mind, we are going to have a discussion on Sangam age. Why do we call it a Sangam age? So there were 3 Sangams which were held. Okay. And in those Sangams, meetings, Sangam literature was composed, and Sangam literature is our major source to know about Sangam age. That is why we are naming it Sangam age. Okay. Do we find any mention of Sangam rulers or dynasties in North India? Ashoka's inscription. Major Rock Edict, second. He said that I am advising the Cheraputra and Keral Putra to do the same. Okay, so these kind of unique facts we should keep in mind. The specific reason is because they are mentioned by Ashok, and UPSC is particularly interested in Ashokan inscriptions. Okay, they are interested in Sangam age also, so they might ask you about the relation, whether these people have been mentioned by Ashok or not, because for some time they are contemporaries as well. Okay, so remember that relation. Now when we are talking about the literature, names are particularly tough. They have been given in your revision material as well, and you must be having them in your notes as well. Okay, so what kind of texts are there? There are various texts called Tolkapiyam, Etutogai, Paithanin Kilkannu, Pattu Pattu. All these texts form the corpus of Sangam literature. When we are talking about the Tamil epics, there are two very prominent epics, Silapadi Karam and Mani Megalai. When we are talking about epics in Sanskrit language, we often remember the names Mahabharata and Ramayana. When it comes to Tamil epics, we are generally not familiar with it, but we should know about those epics as well. So Silapadi Karam and Mani Megalai, these two are Tamil epics. All these texts are going to give us an information about Sangam period. So they are particularly important for us. Thankfully, UPSC has not asked you to name them. UPSC has asked you what is mentioned in Sangam literature. Okay, so I'll just give you the story of Silapadikaram. Are you aware with the story? So I'll tell you the story briefly. On the basis of that, we are going to understand Sangam age, because often I have encountered this problem with students, particularly those who do not belong to southern part of India, that they are not aware with this story and they find it difficult to imagine this particular age. So that I am telling you the story of Silapadikaram. What happens? There is a happy couple who have gotten married, living happily. Okay. Now when they are living happily, the man goes to the city. Now when he is going to the city, he is falling in love with a Ganika. He leaves the wife, starts living in the city. Kovalan is his name. So there are three characters here. Kovalan, the wife is Kannagi, and this other woman is Madhavi. Okay. So Kovalan, Kannagi are in love. He is falling in love with Madhavi also simultaneously. So he started living with her, left the wife. Gradually what happens, that he feels that Madhavi is cheating on him. Madhavi feels the same. They part ways. Kovalan comes back to Kannagi. Kannagi, supposed to be an ideal wife. This is a sarcasm, I hope you understand it. This should not be the trait of an ideal wife. So she, being an ideal wife, forgives the husband for cheating and gives him an anklet to raise some money so that they can start a new life again. The person goes to the city. Now, what happens there? The anklet of the queen has been stolen by someone. So when he goes to sell the anklet, the person, the shopkeeper who is there, he accuses him of theft. Usko leke jata hai Raja ke paas. So Kovalan is presented in the court. Without going into the nitty-gritties, the king says he has stolen the anklet, and he has been given the punishment of death. He dies. Kannagi comes to the city. She has the other pair of the anklet. She breaks it, and then it is revealed कि उसके अंदर जो pearl है वो तो different है. Then king and queen, they realize that he didn't steal the anklet, and then she curses the whole city and she commits sati. She dies. What happens? That these king and queen, they do the penance, they perform some sacrifices, and they also die. That is how the story ends. When we come to Mani Megalai, it is kind of a sequel. So there was this daughter who was born from Kovalan and Madhavi. It is her story. Okay, how she is trying to escape the worldly desires and eventually she converts into a Buddhist nun. That is the story of Mani Megalai. Now, if we look at this story, what do we find here? Because these texts are our basis to understand the Sangam society in general. So what are we getting in these texts? We know that there is a hereditary monarchy. That is one thing that we get to know. And they are often taking decisions on their will. There is nobody to question them. Justice system lies with the ruler. That is another thing that we get to know. We know that there are various kinds of economic landscapes. Two of them are mentioned here only, rural and urban. We know that there are different kinds of crafts people present in that society. We know what are the expectations from a woman. Okay, so the idea of being an ideal wife, performing of sati, those are parts of the society when we are considering the social reality. We also know that there are certain women who are economically more independent, who are taking their own decisions when it comes to the story of Madhavi. So there is that category as well. So there is, देखिए बीच में एक तो क्लास में आ रहे हैं आप, उसके बाद आते ही आप फ्लो इंटरप्ट कर रहे हैं. या तो वक्त से क्लास में होइए, सुनिए क्या बात हो रही है, या तो क्लास के एंड में पूछ लीजिए. ठीक है, इस चीज पे बाउंडेशन नहीं है कि क्वेश्चन ना पूछें, मगर एंड में पूछ लें अगर आप बीच में आ रहे हैं तो, because there is a whole discussion which has already happened and you missed it. So it's not fair to others, it's not fair to the teacher that you interrupt. Let us continue. What was I saying? क्या था लास्ट जो हम बात कर रहे थे? We talked about the condition of women. Craft we discussed, condition of women we had discussed. When we are talking about religion, they are giving patronage to Brahmanism, as well as there are certain local deities who are going to be worshipped. This is what we get to know from the literature. Now, if there is a statement which mentions that in Sangam literature we find details of occupation of people, would that be a right statement or wrong? That will be a right statement. If there is, let's say, a statement that we get to know about the traits of an ideal wife in Sangam literature, would that be a right statement or wrong? That is a right statement. If there is a statement which mentions that Sangam people did not believe in the idea of curse or magic, that will be a wrong statement. If we know the story of only one text, then also we will be able to answer these kind of questions which are based on literature. Okay, so you should know the names, but if you look at the pattern of the question is being asked on the subject matter being present in those texts. Okay, both in prelims as well as in mains. So this is some detail that you should know. Now, when we are looking at archaeological data, we come across a particular type of stone, that is hero stones. Okay, so that is our archaeological source to understand the history of Sangam age. What is a hero stone? A stone which will commemorate a hero. Okay, that will be a hero stone. What is a sati stone? A stone which will commemorate the sati. Who is a hero? हीरो कौन होता है? अच्छा, मेन कैरेक्टर हीरो होता है. कौन होता है मेन कैरेक्टर? हीरो इज समवन. ठीक है, हाँ. जनरली जो मूवीज में होता है, जो विलन को मारता है. ठीक है. So if you look at it in the context of war or fight, a hero is a person who either wins a battle or who dies fighting. If a person is returning after being defeated, that person will generally not be considered a hero. It's not fair, but this is how society has been. Okay, so in this society, warfare was very important for people, because we know that there are three dynasties continuously fighting with each other, Chola, Chera and Pandya. So of course warfare is important. Common people were fighting with each other for the possession of more and more cattle. Okay, so at both the levels, we see warfare being a very common phenomenon for these people. So they worshipped their heroes as well. Now, if somebody has been defeated, of course, these people are not going to give them any kind of credit or respect. UPSC had asked a particular term in 2023, Vatta Kirutal. It seemed very new to people, and for majority of the population it was new. But if you understand the essence of a particular time, when we teach history, we teach the sources first. And when you are being told कि भाई sources में literary sources important हैं और archaeology में hero stone और sati stone important है. So you should know that essence of this society lies in the idea of being a hero in warfare as well. Now there were 4 options and 3 of them were illogical. I'll give you the question as well. We'll discuss it after completing it. But the 4th option was a ritual which a defeated king used to do. What he did, he committed suicide after being defeated. So of course, if he has been defeated, he'll not be respected in the society. So it was this ritual which was called Vattakiru Tal, and often he was also accompanied by some of the ministers. Okay, so Vattakiru Tal is this particular practice. Now a lot of times now what happens, if you have understood the essence and if you are applying your brains while you are sitting in the examination, some questions might be solved on that basis as well. Practical application of the knowledge that we have gathered, because this is also a reality in this examination that you cannot know everything, you cannot remember everything. So we have to be smart enough to apply the knowledge that we have gathered and the knowledge that we remember. So there will be multiple questions which can be solved on this basis as well. That is why it's important to develop the conceptual understanding first. हर चीज रट के नहीं होगी, ठीक है? तो इस तरीके से अभी जो हमने पूरा आपको स्टोरी बताया, what we discussed about the archaeological sources, remember these things and they will help you out in the examination. Now think about it. If there is a question which has been given in mains, write a detailed explanation about the Sangam society and economy based on Sangam sources. This is a question which has been asked in 2013. Will you not be able to write an answer on it? If you remember the story that we have discussed, इकोनॉमी होगा, रूरल है, अर्बन है, तो एग्रीकल्चर भी हो रहा है, क्राफ्ट्स पीपल भी हैं, ट्रेड इज ऑल्सो हैपनिंग, देन ओनली अ सिटी इज existing. So different kind of occupations, different kind of geographical terrains. If we have to write about society, let's say, so Varna system, king having justice in his hands, condition of women, different categories of women, some women being educated, some women were not educated. तो ये सारी चीजें तो हम ऐसे भी जनरली लिख सकते हैं. अब अगर हमने कुछ और नहीं भी पढ़ा है, then also we will be able to write something or the other in that answer, and you will write a good answer if you have the skill of writing. Okay, so it does not matter how many books you have read. What matters is how much you remember and how much knowledge you are able to apply in a critical situation. Okay, तो ये चीजों पे हमको ध्यान देना है. Is this clear? So this we have discussed. Now, when we are talking about literature, we have discussed the literature. You also have the names of the literary texts in your notes. So from there you can revise as well. Now there are two kinds of poetries that you can remember, and the names are easier ones, Aham and Puram poetry. Etutogai is the text, usme ye part hota hai Aham poetry and Puram poetry. Again, if you are interested in poetry, you can read the English translation by A.K. Ramanujan. He had translated these Tamil poetries into English language. Okay, so when we are talking about Aham poetry and Puram poetry, what is the difference? In Puram poetry, we find details related to politics and warfare. In Aham poetry, we generally find details related to the subject of love. Okay, so here we find representation of women in Aham poetry also and in Puram poetry as well. What does it tell us about? There were certain women who were having political representation as well. They might not be decision makers, they might not be rulers, but they were having certain position in the court. Okay, so during Sangam age, certain women held better position. It does not mean that the category of women in general had a better lifestyle. Some women had better lifestyle. Is this clear? So that is why I told you the difference between these two kinds of poetries. Now, if we talk about the economic life, we have discussed a lot of things already. So here we should know that these people are practicing agriculture, these people are practicing pastoralism as well, they are practicing craft production as well as trade. Okay, and there are various kinds of geographical terrains which have been mentioned in Sangam texts. For example, Neidal, Marudam, Pallai, all these names have also been given in your revision material. So look at, remember these terms, revise it before the examination so that you know that these are denoting the geographical terrains. Is this clear? Because UPSC is asking about terminology. So we have made a very comprehensive notes for your ease as well. It has already been uploaded if you have seen it. So go through it once. Okay. So terms of economic importance have been mentioned in Sangam text, which tells us about the variety of occupations that people were engaged in. When we are talking about their trade relations, they frequently traded with Romans. And in that context, there are certain sites which become important. For example, Korakai, Puhar, Muchiri, Erikamedu, all these are ports. Okay, from these sites, trade was happening with Romans, and we find a lot of gold coins of Roman in these areas as well. Puhar is particularly a site which has frequently been mentioned in literary texts as well. Okay, so that is another thing that you can remember. So we should know this about Sangam age too. When we are talking about the timeline of particular rulers, it's very hazy information that we get. Why? Because when we are looking at Sangam literature, it is concerning itself mostly with economic, social and cultural aspects of life. Various stories have been given. We come across the name of two kings in that context prominently. One is Senguvattam and second is Karikal. Again, UPSC does not ask on king. If you want to remember it, it has been given in notes. It is up to you whether you want to mug it up or not. Questions have not been asked. Questions are revolving around economic and cultural aspect. Is this clear? So this is one thing, they are constantly fighting with each other. That is another detail when we are talking about the politics. Third, that you should remember, this you should remember, that they have been mentioned in the second major rock edict of Ashok. Social life we discussed, Varna system was there. We talked about the condition of women as well. When we are talking about religion, so we see the presence of Brahmanism, Buddhism as well as Jainism. Okay, so presence of all the religions was there. When we are talking about some of the prominent gods and goddesses, prominently we find two names which were localized names. Kannagi, who was being worshipped as an ideal wife, and Murugan is another god. So you can remember these names from examination perspective. Here, please focus upon the sites, upon the important terminologies, and upon the literary knowledge that we are getting from Tamil texts. We have been saying Tamil text, language Tamil ही है, ठीक है? तो ये चीज़ भी हमको ध्यान में रखना है. In the past few years, you will find one question at least in prelims every year. 22 में भी पूछा था, 23 में 2 क्वेश्चंस पूछे थे संगम पे, ठीक है? तो इस वजह से इस टॉपिक का इंपॉर्टेंस बढ़ जाता है. क्लियर है? सो दिस इज अबाउट संगम एज. नाउ लेट अस गो बैक टू नॉर्थ. वर्ण सिस्टम इज देयर. अगर ब्राह्मणिज्म को सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं तो क्यों नहीं होगा वर्ण सिस्टम? ठीक है, चलें. अब आते हैं हम गुप्त एज के ऊपर. We have moved back to north. If we talk about the importance of this particular topic, it is important from both prelims as well as mains perspective. You will find questions in prelims also, and in mains, if you look at the last 5 years only, you will find 2 questions being asked on contribution of Gupta rulers. Okay, before that one question was asked on Gupta coins in a comparative manner, but the question was asked on coins. Okay, so from mains perspective it is important. We are covering it here from prelims perspective. From that perspective also it remains very important. What kind of questions have been asked? Again, sites, terms and literature. These 3 categories become important when we are talking about Gupta age from prelims perspective. Is this clear? So this has been the nature of questions in the last 10 years. उसके basis पे हम ये analysis कर रहे हैं कि terms, sites and literature that has been asked. So nonetheless, we should know about some of the important rulers and what has been their contribution. After that, we are going to discuss every aspect, be it economic, be it social, be it political or cultural. Okay, so let us start with our sources. What kind of sources do we have? We are going to have literary sources. Okay, we'll talk about literature when we'll come to culture section. A variety of literary sources are available here, and we'll devote at least 10 to 15 minutes of time discussing the literature, because this is a time which has been considered a golden age from cultural perspective. When we are looking at this time period from social perspective, there were a lot of problems. But when we are talking about this period from a cultural perspective, it was a very significant time period for development of, be it literature, art or architecture or technological development. All these things are being seen here. Just give me a minute. Okay, so literature is very important. We will discuss the literature separately when we will come to cultural aspect. We also find a few inscriptions from this particular period. Can you name any? Allahabad inscription, Prayag Prashasti of Samudra Gupta. Okay, so back then the name was Prayag, then Allahabad, then again Prayag. So Prayag Prashasti, it is known mostly as the Prayag Prashasti. In some books you will also find Allahabad pillar inscription. That is one very prominent inscription. Second, we find from Eran. Eran inscription is also there. What is less talked about is Puna plates of Prabhavati Gupta. What is the importance of Puna plate? See, why am I asking you to remember this particular fact? Because time and again you will see that government also focuses a lot upon the contribution of women. There is a constant talk that we need to recognize the contribution of women in our historical development. In history writing also, you will see that feminist writings have moved towards recognizing the contribution of women. UPSC also keeps asking questions on contribution of women, mostly from modern India, but in ancient India also we find a few names. In medieval India as well, you find a few names. So wherever we are finding certain names, we should try to remember them. So Prabhavati Gupta is the daughter of one of the Gupta kings, Chandragupta II, and she was married into Vakataka dynasty. When she was married into Vakataka dynasty, she ruled as queen regent there for quite some time. Who is a queen regent? When you are ruling in somebody else's name. Let's say if the son is minor. So women were not supposed to be the queens. So often they have ruled as queen regents. You find the example of Prabhavati Gupta from Vakataka kingdom. You find the example of Rudrama Devi from Kakatiya kingdom. You find the example, the very famous example of Didda from Kashmir. When we are moving to medieval India, then we find one example of Razia Sultana who ruled in her own name. And that was possible because her father named her the successor. Okay. Otherwise, you will find prominent examples of women ruling as queen regents. They are very few in number. Nonetheless, they are present. We should know their names. So when we are looking at this Pune plate of Prabhavati Gupta, in that plate, she is talking about her lineage. And interestingly, she is tracing her lineage not from the in-laws family, but from the natal family. She says that I am the daughter of Chandragupta II, who was the son of this person, and then she goes back to tracing the ancestor. Okay, so Shri Gupta, Ghatotakaksha, Chandragupta first. This is how she is providing us the whole genealogy. So that becomes a very important text, that becomes a very important inscription for us to know the genealogy of Guptas. The other term which is present there is copper plate. Why copper plate? Why not stone inscription? Another thing is changing now, that a lot of land grants were being given not only to Brahmins but also gradually to the officials. Now, when you are giving land grants to people, especially when you are giving tax-free land grants in perpetuity, you are not going to give them in Doab or in the areas which are very fertile. Those land grants will be given in far off areas. Okay, so you need something which will last for perpetuity, because if the ruler has said कि भाई ये ज़मीन हमने इनको दे दी, so there should be a documentation to show. So something that would last for perpetuity. Stone can also last for perpetuity. Something which is cheaper. अगर हम उसका बात करें दाम का तो stone is also cheap. Why not stone then? Because these people have to move to far off areas. Copper is cheaper, it is easier to carry, it is also going to last for perpetuity if it has been taken care of properly. So we see a gradual move towards copper plate inscriptions. These are conceptual things that we should keep in mind. Increasing number of land grants by this time. Is this clear? A question on feudalism has been asked. If you have this understanding, you will be able to understand feudalism as well gradually. We will discuss that in the next topic. Okay. So now this particular inscription is important. We understood the importance. We talked about 2 additional facts as well belonging to that. Now let us discuss about some of the important Gupta rulers. One very important Gupta ruler is going to be Chandragupta first. Why he was important? What do we know which is unique in his context culturally? Do you remember it? See, he is the one who issued a particular coin where not only the king but also the wife of the king was portrayed. So on that coin, Chandragupta first as well as Kumari Devi, both of them were portrayed. Why she was portrayed, why not other queens, that is not the information that we get. What we do get to know, that a queen was portrayed on one of the Gupta coins and she was Kumari Devi. Probably she was more assertive, probably he loved her more, anything can be the reason. Okay, so that is one important cultural detail that we can remember. He is the one who is also doing some expansion. Now, after him, we come across the name of Samudra Gupta. Samudra Gupta is a very important name, and this name is of cultural importance as well. Be it Samudra Gupta or be it Chandragupta II, both the names are very important. Why Samudra Gupta is important and what is a very important source to know about him? Apart from Aaron inscription, we have Prayag Prashasti, Allahabad pillar inscription. This pillar is culturally very important for Indian history. Why is it very important for Indian history? It is an Ashokan pillar. On the Ashokan pillar, Ashokan inscription was already inscribed. On this very pillar, Samudragupta inscribed his inscription. And in the coming years, Jahangir also inscribed one of the inscriptions. Why are they using Ashokan pillar as the base? They have not written about that. They have written their ideas, what they wanted to convey. But for the cultural history of Indian subcontinent, this pillar becomes very important. Why? Because it bears the inscription of 3 different rulers from 3 different chronological time span in 3 different languages. So in that context, this inscription, these inscriptions as well as this pillar becomes very important. What we are concerned with here at this point of time is Samudragupta's Prayag Prashasti. Who composed Samudragupta's Prayag Prashasti? Hari Sen. Hari Sen is the name of the person who composed it. Now, what is a Prashasti? A type of inscription which mentions the political and cultural achievements of a ruler in an exaggerated manner. That is the Prashasti. So if we look at the basic meaning itself, we know that here political achievements will also be mentioned and cultural achievement will also be mentioned. So we will get to know about the political exploits of Samudragupta. We will also get to know about his cultural contributions or his personality in cultural sense. Okay, so what is mentioned in this particular inscription? Hari Sen gives us a detailed explanation of the political battles that Samudragupta has fought. Do we need to remember each names? UPSC is not asking about battles. Okay, what you should remember, that he is somebody who is starting from Prayag, coming here, western जो हमारे इंडिया का पार्ट है, from here, and he is going to south as well to Kamrup and then coming back to Prayag. Okay, so according to that particular inscription, he has defeated various rulers. What he is going to do, he is going to make some of that area as the area of direct rule. From others, he is going to receive gifts. Okay, because it is a practical decision. You cannot rule the whole of Indian subcontinent by sitting in Prayag at this point of time very effectively. Why? Because the technology was limited, be it in the context of transportation, be it in the context of communication. So there were logistical problems. Even if you have won over a particular territory, you will have to give them some or the other kind of autonomy. Is this clear? So remember this much. When we are talking about Samudragupta, what do we need to remember? That his political achievement was immense. He defeated various rulers. And if you have read this, there is this very Eurocentric epithet. Samudragupta is known as Napoleon of India. Napoleon is coming in late 18th, early 19th century. Samudragupta goes way back. But if you look at history writing, this is one problem, that there are various epithets which are Eurocentric. For example, in the context of Kalidas as well, we call him Shakespeare of India. Perhaps it should be the other way around. But it has been this way. UPSC doesn't ask these kind of questions, but you should know it tells you about the victories of Samudragupta. Is this clear? Now, after winning all these areas, as Hari Sen informs us that he also performed Ashwamedha or horse sacrifice. This is one thing which you can remember by logic. A ruler who is patronizing Hinduism or Vedic culture, अगर Vedic culture का भी mention आ रहा है, a ruler who is patronizing Vedic culture and is of expansionist nature, it is highly likely that they will perform Ashwamedha or horse sacrifice, because the essence of this sacrifice lies in expansion of your geographical territory. Is this clear? So by logic you can remember this, since this person is also an expansionist and patronizing Vedic culture, a Vaishnavite, he is going to perform Ashwamedha or horse sacrifice as well. So this is something that we are getting to know. What else do we get to know about Samudragupta by looking at this particular inscription? That he was a very good Veena player. In one of the coins also, he has been shown playing a Veena. Okay, so that is one mention in cultural sense. Hari Sen also tells us that Samudragupta was a very good poet. Now we don't find any writings of Samudragupta. So whether it was an exaggeration or whether the writings have not survived, that we cannot comment upon. We can say that according to Hari Sen, Samudragupta was a very good poet. So it has been shown in Prayag Prashasti that Samudragupta was proficient in music as well as literature. Is this much clear? So this is something that we can keep in mind when we are discussing this particular person named Samudragupta. Is there any doubt? We can start our discussion on the next ruler, Chandragupta, and that is where we can stop eventually. So when we are talking about Chandragupta II, what becomes important about him? He is making matrimonial alliances with Vakataka. So Vakataka was a dynasty which emerged in Deccan region. Okay, so these people are ruling from Prayag, and later the capital was shifted to Ujjain during the time period of Chandragupta II. So they also had two capitals. He made matrimonial alliances with Vakataka. So he married his daughter into the family of Vakatakas. So here what do I want you to understand? That he was somebody who was using the tactic of diplomatic alliance. He was using diplomacy for expansion purpose. So he is expanding the sphere of influence by making a matrimonial alliance. Is that clear? So that is one thing that we can remember about him. What else becomes very important during his period is coming of Fahian. So Fahian is a Chinese traveler who is coming to India during the reign of Chandragupta II. And he wrote Fuku Ki, Travels of Fahian. Okay, so that is a text that he is writing. Does Fahian talks about the political landscape of that time period? Does he go into the details of Gupta administration or rulers? No. गेस कर रहे हैं कि पढ़ा है? That is Wensang. That is why I asked you this. That is the basic difference between Fahayan and Wensang. When we are talking about Wensang, he is very much interested in the political landscape of Indian subcontinent. When we talk about Fahayan, he is not interested in the political landscape. Okay, so that is a basic difference. When we will talk about Wensang, Wensang is writing extensively about the political landscape as well. Here, when we are talking about this traveler Fahayan, he is giving us a lot of details of economic, social, and cultural life of Indian subcontinent. What has he written about? So he is writing about the flourishing economy. He is talking about the agriculture, craft production. He is talking about the flourishing trade as well. So these are the things that he is writing. He also mentions that there are a few cities which are flourishing at large scale. There are certain cities where we see a decline. So he talks about coming up of various cities, decline of various cities, flourishing, some of the flourishing cities. So he is giving us economic details. He is talking about the prevalent society as well, and in a lot of detail he is giving us the information. So he is saying that these people were following vegetarianism at large. Okay. So vegetarianism was probably prevalent at that point of time. He is talking about that. He is saying that the society is divided on the basis of Varna. There are various castes. He is also giving us a detail of the institution of untouchability. And he uses the term Chandal to denote untouchable people. He is saying that these people are not allowed to enter the village premises without making an announcement. So he is giving us a very detailed picture of the prevalence of the institution of untouchability by this time. He talks about the condition of some women as well. So that is another thing that he is giving us information about. He is talking about the cultural landscape in the context of religion. So he is talking about prevalence of Vaishnavism. He is saying that Buddhism was also present. So he is talking about different religions that were present at that point of time. Now, if you compare his account with Megasthenes' account, you'll find a striking difference. When we were talking about Megasthenes, he had gotten most of the things wrong. When we are talking about Fahian, or even when we will discuss Wensang, these people have given a vivid picture of that time period. At the same time, most of those informations are accurate. What is the difference? Why they are more accurate than the previous foreign account? He is a Buddhist monk. He is traveling to India to copy Buddhist manuscripts. Okay, so he is coming to India not with the help of a royal authority. He wanted to come to India. He is a Buddhist scholar. He wanted to copy manuscripts. तो बहुत संभावना है कि बग्गी में बैठ के नहीं आएगा. When we are talking about Megasthenes, he was a royal ambassador. So of course he'll be treated like that. वो एक exclusion उसका रहेगा. When we are talking about these people, they are interacting with the masses. Okay. When we'll revise Wensang has mentioned that he was looted twice. तो कैसे लूटा जा रहा है उसको? जाहिर सी बात है ऐसे जा रहा है, उसका उतना सेफ्टी सिक्योरिटी इंश्योर्ड नहीं है. ठीक है. So when we are talking about these people, they had more interaction with general masses. They were able to observe the society closely. They have spent a significant amount of time in Indian subcontinent, copying the Buddhist texts, interacting with the general population, and understanding the essence of society. That is probably a reason why these people are able to understand things in a more accurate manner. Is this clear? Why these accounts are important? Because they give us an outsider perspective in the prevalent society. तो ये सारी चीज़ें जो हैं they are associated with the accounts of foreign travelers and it makes up of a very important segment in mains examination. Prelims में हमको क्या पता होना चाहिए कि what have they mentioned. Okay, an analytical perspective will be required to write answers. Some of them we have already discussed here also, but there we'll put a lot of focus on this particular individual from mains perspective as well. अभी इतना चीज ध्यान में रखिए जो prelims के लिए required है. Is this much clear? Clear है कि नहीं है? समझ आ रहा है? So we can stop the class here and we'll continue with the Gupta Empire in tomorrow's class. We'll solve questions which have been asked on this particular topic. Then we'll move on to post-Gupta period. Okay? Have a good day. और रिवाइज करके आइए कल.